Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips, which is brought to you by Wellness Forum Health, the Wellness Forum Institute, and Make Americans Free Again. So, the first thing I want to mention, just a few announcements, and then I want to get into today's topic, which is about the measles outbreak and RFK. And a lot of you have questions, and I just decided to allocate today's broadcast to it. But just a couple of announcements first. One is, remember, during this membership drive for Wellness Forum, if you join, we will give you a gift certificate equal to the dues you pay, which you can apply to certain of our programs, like our upcoming cancer program, which is scheduled for March 21st and 22nd, where we'll be talking about everything from screening tests to putting together cancer survival plans and trauma and cancer, the psychological aspects of cancer. You're going to hear from survivors and the people they've worked with to survive. It's going to be an amazing program. It's a Friday night, Saturday morning, afternoon, evening, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. So anyway, if you're interested in the membership campaign, let me know. I'm happy to send you information. Another thing we have is a free program on March 19th called Empower Yourself. We're going to cover research tips, how to check things out for yourself, some basics that will make you much more independent in terms of being able to make decisions, and things like, why is it so hard to lose weight? This will be like a 2.5, 3 hour program with lots of time for questions and answers. That's free. All you have to do is send me an email. I will sign you up for that. All right. So lots of good stuff coming up, and hopefully you will take advantage of some of it. So let's get to the topic of the day right now, which is what is going on with measles? What do I have to say about what RFK is saying and doing about it, and topics related to that? So the first thing I'm going to say about it, and you're going to think I'm a broken record because you've heard me say it so much for 5 years, but this is nothing new. In fact, outbreaks of measles, mumps, rubella, nothing new. In fact, I found articles in our library that date back to over 10 years ago on these outbreaks. So this information I'm going to talk to you about right now was added to our library in 2016 and provides some background that's necessary for understanding the issue, which is what is the threat, right? Between 1956 and 1960, an average of 542,000 cases of measles were reported annually in the United States, with an average of 450 deaths per year. Now, we always mourn the death of a child. It's not, we don't want to be cavalier about it, but it means the death rate from measles was 0.00083% before the vaccine. The risk of dying of measles was really, really low. The first measles vaccine was licensed in 1963, and widespread measles vaccination began in 1968. According to the CDC, prior to 1963, nearly all children got the measles by the time they were 15 years old. I was one of those kids. And between 2 and 4 million people in the United States were infected each year. About 48,000 were hospitalized and 400 to 500 died. So in other words, hospitalization rates, very, very, very low. And death rates, again, very, 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 very low. So a critical thinker could conclude that the measles vaccine maybe wasn't so necessary. Most people got measles as children, achieved lifetime immunity, and very few were hospitalized, and even fewer died. Now, this was added to our library in 2018, what I'm going to tell you right now. During the last 10 years, the United States and other developed countries have experienced an increase on the number of mumps cases, mostly in vaccinated individuals and in communities with a high vaccination rate. A research group analyzed data from 6 studies that looked at vaccine efficacy and determined that the mumps vaccine wanes between 16 and 51 years after vaccination. That's an average of 27 years. The researchers reported that outbreaks among adolescents and young adults in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and from 2006 to the present, are in alignment with the time when the vaccine is expected to wear off. So how do you solve this? Well, of course, more boosters. The researchers suggested a 3rd dose of vaccine at 18 years of age and booster doses throughout adulthood as the best way to prevent mumps outbreaks in older people. Now, a 2014 study showed that measles, rubella, and measles, mumps, rubella, or MMR, vaccines don't prevent these diseases even in highly vaccinated populations. For example, in China, despite widespread and free vaccination campaigns that resulted in very high vaccination rates, in 2008, there were 12,782 cases of measles reported in just one county. In 1985, researchers reported an outbreak of measles in adolescents in Corpus Christi, Texas, in a fully vaccinated population. They wrote, quote, "We conclude that outbreaks of measles can occur in secondary schools even when more than 99% of the students have been vaccinated and more than 95% are immune." In Montana, in 1995, a measles outbreak in a population that had achieved a vaccination rate of 98.7% led researchers to report this outbreak suggests that measles transmission may persist in some settings despite appropriate implementation of the current measles elimination strategy. So, to summarize, the measles vaccine was never necessary. Outbreaks of vaccinated children of measles and mumps and rubella are not uncommon. So, why all this hysteria? And this brings us to the present, and that is that every time there is vaccine hesitancy rearing its, they think, ugly head, and people are starting to fight back a little bit, we end up with this type of thing. So again, not new. I know you get tired of hearing that. It's all been going on for a long time. So the World Health Organization, the last time it happened before this current situation, determined that vaccine hesitancy was one of the top 10 global threats for health in 2019. Like clockwork, in early 19, over 100 cases were confirmed in 10 states. Lots of media attention. Now, at that time, about 330 million people in the country. So again, the definition of an epidemic, which they were saying it was a disease that impacted one person out of 3.3 million people. The response, hysteria. Washington Governor Jay Inslee declared a state of emergency after 25 cases of measles were reported in a single county. He didn't declare it for the county, he declared it for the entire state. In response, Democrat then Congressman Adam Schiff, who's now in the Senate, wrote a letter to Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, now Meta, asking how Facebook intended to protect users from seeing what he called misleading information about vaccines on social media, particularly Facebook. He also mailed letters to the CEO of Google. YouTube is a subsidiary of Google, and he was really concerned about that as well. Schiff's letters stated that Facebook's algorithms were not designed to differentiate between quality information and misinformation, and the consequences of this are, quote, troubling for public health issues. Pinterest stopped returning results for searches related to vaccines, and drastic steps were taken to begin, to stop the spread of misinformation. So this was kind of the beginning of the censorship long before COVID happened. It wouldn't be another year. So until COVID happened, and they were well down the disinformation and misinformation censorship path by that point in time. So here we are again. It's 2025 and we have a measles outbreak. And isn't it just amazing, the coincidence that it's just when RFK is confirmed as the leader of the Department of Health and Human Services, a person who's openly questioned the safety and efficacy of vaccines. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, right? So nothing new, just more of it, just like all the rest of the public health responses since 2020. So let's consider some more facts and to bring it up to the present. So according to authorities, the MMR vaccine is 95% effective, all right? That means 5% failure rate, but there are many studies showing that the failure rate is actually higher than 5%. Now, this sounds low, and it is, but it translates to about 3 million kids between the ages of 1 and 17 in the US who are assumed to be protected because they got vaccinated, but actually may not be. A child who develops a mild case of measles after vaccination may not have any symptoms, but can still spread the disease to other children. You heard that right. A vaccinated child can. There are many studies showing that vaccinated children can be the cause of measles outbreaks. One article published in a virology journal stated, quote, vaccine reactions and detection of measles vaccine RNA in recently immunized persons may complicate case classification, especially in those presenting with another respiratory viral illness. In other words, we might assume it's measles, but we're not sure that it is. That article also said, quote, shedding of measles vaccine RNA is not uncommon, and vaccine RNA can be detected up to 29 days post MMR vaccine. There are some more complicating factors. The vaccination rate is high in the United States, but it's estimated to be as low as 68% in some countries. So obviously, you've got US citizens traveling in and out of the country and citizens of other countries traveling in and out of the US. So it's almost inevitable that you're going to have some cases of measles as a result, because you're talking about 3 million vulnerable kids who've been vaccinated. People like me aren't vulnerable because I had measles as a child, and you get lifetime immunity, which I would argue is maybe the better idea. Well, the headlines started screaming last week that a child who had not been vaccinated in Texas had died of measles. And before panicking, one thing I want to say about this, I read the report, and it's interesting. It said that the child tested positive for the virus. Didn't say the child died from measles. Maybe the child did, but my point is that there's nothing definitive about that yet, and we don't have much information on the child's health status aside from this particular issue. So easy to use conjecture when you're trying to gin up some panic, right? So now we get to, what does RFK have to say about this? Well, I read his written statement because I think that's irrefutable instead of what people say he's saying. So I won't read the whole thing to you here, just a couple of excerpts that I think are important. He wrote, as the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, I'm deeply concerned about the recent measles outbreak links to Outbreak. This situation has escalated rapidly, with the Texas Department of State Health Services reporting 146 confirmed cases since January 25. And then he goes on to say it's tragic that this one child died of measles. In response to the outbreak, going on what he writes, I've directed the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response to work closely with Texas health authorities to promote or to provide comprehensive support. HHS's efforts include offering technical assistance, laboratory support, vaccines, and therapeutic medications as needed. And then he goes on to write, as healthcare providers, community leaders, and policymakers, we have a shared responsibility to protect public health. This includes ensuring that accurate information about vaccine safety and efficacy is disseminated. We must engage with communities to understand their concerns, provide culturally competent education, and make vaccines readily accessible for all those who want them. And then he talks about parents, saying they play a pivotal role in safeguarding their children's health. All parents should consult with their healthcare providers to understand their options to get the MMR vaccine. The decision to support or to vaccinate is a personal one, and vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. Now, obviously, there's some things to be concerned about. I understand people saying, what the heck, right? RFK is seemingly a little supportive of vaccines and that sort of thing. I do think it's important to pay attention to the language. Parents should, make the decision. They should, really get information from their healthcare providers. But it's far from what I think people want RFK to do and what I would have liked to have seen. This is an example that the vaccines may not be working and that sort of thing. But anyway, here's what I think we ought to do. Let's take a deep breath. And let's give the guy a little time. He's been in office for a very short period of time. One thing that he's done that I think is really important is he canceled some committee meetings concerning vaccines. And his public statement was that he was concerned about committee members who had conflicts of interest, and he wanted to get rid of those people before the committee meetings meet or the committees met. So I think that was a really good step in the right direction and indicates that he's on the case. I don't know how much more you could expect with just a few days in office, right? So that's a good, let's just wait and see what happens. But I think the other thing that we should take from this is there's such a tendency, and I totally get it. I get tired of being an activist too, you know. We would just love to sit back and think that the government's going to take care of this, or RFK is going to take care of it, or it's somehow going to go away without so much effort from us. But it really is up to us to solve some of these problems. And that's why we have to gather and start groups and grow groups and do the things that we've been doing for the last 5 years. We cannot just sit back and hope that somebody else is going to take care of it for us. We, the people, have to take care of it for us. So, with that, I'll make my usual plea for start a group, a Make Americans Free Again group. Build a Make Americans Free Again group. If you are already a member, bring more friends, donate money. We so appreciate it. Thank you so very much for your support in that area because what we're doing is expensive. And there are lawsuits that can be filed over the childhood vaccine schedule that I've not disclosed strategy yet. We're going to file and then I'll tell you about it. But that is on the agenda. So if this is an issue that concerns you, we at Make Americans Free Again are not sitting back and saying, well, I hope RFK takes care of it. I can go on vacation for a while. I don't think that's not what I'm counting on. I'm counting on us fixing it. So I'd like for you to have that perspective too. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this in the form of an article. I am happy to send it to any of you. You can email me at pampopper@msn.com. I won't have it ready, when you watch this video. It'll take me a little bit of time, but I'll send you the article so you have it in writing. And then also don't forget our free program coming up on the 19th and our cancer summit on the 21st and 22nd. And if you choose to join, remember in this video, I talked about some of the excerpts from library articles, the Wellness Forum library articles that have been posted for a long time. So we have 1,700 articles like that in our library and 3,600 hours of video. Members can access this stuff. And if you join right now, you get double your money. You buy a basic membership, you get the same amount. So $99 membership is a basic membership. You get a $99 certificate that you can use toward the Cancer Summit or some of our other paid programs that you might want to take. So anyway, my email address again, pampopper@msn.com. We'll keep up the good fight. We'll keep you educated about this stuff. And I'm not very concerned about measles outbreaks. They've been going on for years. Nothing new, just more of it, as you've heard me say again and again. All right, as usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. And I will be back to you next week with more news. Thanks for watching.